Hi, I'm Nigel Andrew. I'm the chair of the Holsworth Wildlife Research Endowment Committee that looks after the grant via the Ecological Society of Australia. And I thought today I'll do a presentation just giving some tips for assessors in what they should look out for when you are assessing the applications from the, particularly the, or for the initial applications from PhD students. I firstly should say thank you. I know it's a thankless duty doing assessments for anything, but we really appreciate the time and effort you put in to assessing the Holsworth grants. It is, again, because it's through the Ecological Society of Australia, we know a lot of you have an affiliation with the Society and also have been awarded these grants in the past, or your supervisors of or current awardees or previous awardees. And so you know how important these awards are to the students. So we do really appreciate the time that you put in to help us assess these awards. And I guess on that, if you agree to do the assessments, please can you return them by the due date? And obviously, like all good things, the earlier the better. So it's really important that if you are able, if you do say yes to take them on, please do return them when they're meant to be returned, so we can do the assessments and also get the results out to the students as quickly as possible, and also get the funds to the university research officers. So in general for you, you'd probably receive between 6 and 10 applications if depending on the round, depending on how many students apply. They do fluctuate between rounds, and also depending on how many assessors that we have available. We ideally try and get 6 to 10 to use so we can get a good assessment across a range of different applications. They are randomly allocated in the sense that I don't try and pair up sort of disciplines between you and the students. I think as an assessor, you can obviously can assess any application from an ecologist, and you should be able to. If the application is too intense and too difficult to understand, that tells you a lot about the type of application that's being submitted. So as an ecologist with an experience in the area, you should be able to assess any of the applications that come through. And I guess when you are doing this, also identify any conflicts of interest. We mainly identify conflicts of interest based on the email addresses and also the affiliations. So if it is one of your students and we couldn't find it, please do identify that. And also if they're from your university, in general, also identify that. Or if it's a close personal contact with you, please identify those as conflict of interest. And in most cases, we'll try and allocate another grant to you and take that one off you. If you're unsure, you can assess the grant, but make sure you do flag the potential conflicts in the comments on the assessor's spreadsheet when they do come in, so we can identify whether it's we can take that assessment as valid, or we need to remove it from the assessment. So do make sure, if you're unsure, just get in touch with the ESA office, and we can sort of work out what the best way to move forward there is. So in terms of the grant marking criteria, these are the things that you should be looking for and making assessments on for the applications. So the first criteria is the application focused on one of the areas highlighted for research support? Is the project description well developed? Is the budget requested appropriate for the budget for the project being carried out? The overall quality of the project, and that's taking into account we are here to sort of fund the significant numbers. We're currently between 40 and 50% of applications get funded. So take that into account when you are assessing the quality, and also these are students at the start of their PhDs. And the competence of the students, do they actually have a good track record? And do they exhibit potential quality for carrying out the project? And then giving the application an overall ranking relative to the other ones you've read. So I'll go through each of these criteria in a bit more detail. So criteria 1. So this is based on the Holsworth sort of philosophy. So the applications do need to get sort of, you know, highly ranked. We're ranking 1 to 5 here, from highly focused or highly ranked to not focused. So to be highly ranked, they need to fall into one of these categories. So it needs to be fieldwork on Australian native plants or animals to gain understanding of ecological interactions, population dynamics, and on behaviour and species distribution. Or it needs to be a conservation biology aligned or biodiversity study relating to the management of protected areas and rare or threatened species in Australia. Or it needs to be based around wildlife management relating to sport hunting, harvesting, pest control management of non-game animals, and the effective land management of native species. So the project needs to align well with these, and it needs to make it explicit to be highly focused in this area. Criteria 2, has the project description been well developed? Again, it's ranking from 1 to 5. And again, take into context they are first year PhD students, so we're not expecting them to have everything fully formed at this point, but they should have some idea of what they're doing and where they're going. And it also should be really focus on the project description that they're preparing to do in the first year that we're funding now. And make sure that the students, they've given an idea of the overall PhD project, but they're really focusing in on that one part of the project that they want funded from the Holsworth grant, and primarily in that first year they're requesting money. They could be in their second year of their PhD and staying to request funding now, that's fine. But it needs to be, we want to really assess the particular year that they're requesting funding for to be of the utmost in your mind when you're assessing the proposals. Is the project requesting appropriate, or is it appropriate budget for the project being carried out? So remember, they are in their first year, and there's multiple contexts of other funds available. So they might have, they might have 5 or 6 components to their project, and some of that might be well funded, particularly if they're doing molecular work or any lab-based work, or even another field-based work. But the aspect that they're focusing on for the Holsworth has not necessarily been fully funded. So again, take that into context. And so it's again really encompassing, sort of assessing what the students are asking money for, and do they need that money to actually carry out that component of their PhD. If they are well funded, the students need to make that clear, and it needs to be well identified, and they need to ask why they're asking for funding for that specific focus related to the Holsworth grant. So that needs to be really clear. It shouldn't be up to you to try and second guess what they're saying. If they do come from a project which is part of a larger DECA or a larger discovery grant or an industry grant, that's fine. But they need to make that clear, and they need to identify why this component of their project is requiring funding over and above what they might already have access to. And in terms of the Holsworth funding, the priority for Holsworth funding is for fieldwork or for lab-based work directly related to fieldwork that the student carried out. So from that instance, you would assume that the first year of funding they're requesting is based on fieldwork. If they're asking for lab work without carrying out any fieldwork previously, that would raise a red flag to say, well, it's not really, they're really trying to sort of they're using other people's fieldwork to extend their work. And that's not one of the key sort of drivers of the Holsworth grant. The Holsworth grant is really about getting students out into the field, out into the biota, and actually doing the field work themselves, and then making sure that the data they have collected is properly assessed and properly analysed and fully developed. In terms of the rankings, again, make sure that they, when you're looking at the quality of their project, it goes from excellent to not fundable, and you might well have multiple students which have excellent projects. That's fine, but when it comes to the next stage of you need to actually identify the top one to the bottom one in your final assessment as well. They can be, if they're all excellent, that's wonderful, but you need to be able to differentiate between which ones are a little bit better than the one below that as well. And also, does the student have competence? Does their track record exhibit a good ability to carry out the project? Usually based on their undergraduate sort of, it shouldn't just be the transcripts. They should actually have written a narrative to explain their transcript or explain their experience. And they also should be showing some experience that they've had in their resume. Even if it is volunteer work, they should be identifying how that work will assist them with their PhD project, and particularly with the research that they want to carry out as part of the Holsworth. And that is really important, that they don't just say, oh, I've done my bachelor's here. This is my, I've got P's and D's and HDs. They should be explaining in more detail what experience that they've had and what particular tools that they've been able to carry with them from those units into the field, and what they think is important to then carry on during their PhD. And then the overall ranking. So this is, again, where you need to identify the top one to the last one. And as I said before, there could be a ranking here of, excellence to, if you have, if you've got 8 individuals and 6 are all excellent and 2 are okay, you need to differentiate between the top 1 and the top 4th and the bottom one. And finally, again, if I haven't said before, thanks very much for helping out. We really do appreciate the time and effort you put into assessing these grants, and the students appreciate it as well. And we hope that we can continue having your involvement in the Holsworth process. And just again, reminder, if you do say yes, please return your assessment sheets by the due dates, so we can get the assessments done across the board, and then the applicants will know if they've been successful or not as soon as possible. Thanks very much.